some of the lofty agendas of the preceding government. The basis of economic development in the 40-year development plan is supposed to be, as you said, coordinated by your outfit. If you haven't seen the document, how are you to effectively coordinate these ministries? And what do you think the National Development Plan, the 40-year development plan, seeks to achieve?
In fact, they met the whole caucus of the NPP in our headquarters to discuss initially the 40-year development plan. The Vice President and myself expressed our views on the length of time about it. Now that we are in power, we're surely going to have a critical look at that program. We're not going to swallow it hook and eye, certainly not. As I said, I made my view clear that I do not believe in planning beyond 10 years, and I still stand by that.
Mr. Chairman, Article 78, 1 of the Constitution says that ministers of state shall be appointed by the President with the prior approval of Parliament from among members of Parliament or persons qualified to be elected as members of Parliament. Honorable Osafo-Marfo is not a member of Parliament, but I believe he is among persons qualified to be elected as members of Parliament. He was a former member of Parliament. He is not a member of Parliament. If you go to Article 94 of the Constitution, it says that one of the criteria for being eligible to contest is that he has paid all his taxes or made arrangements satisfactory to the appropriate authorities for the payment of his taxes. And if you also go to Article 286 of the Constitution, which deals with declaration of assets, it says that when you are in public office, before you take over, you declare your assets, or at the point of taking over, you declare your assets. And when you leave public office, you declare your assets. I'm simply asking whether you have met these constitutional eligibility criteria to become a minister of state under Article 78.
Certificate, which then qualifies the 94 you talked about, and that is up to the end of 2016. We were given guidelines by the Office of the Appointment Committee to sort this thing out, and I've done it. I'm a very faithful taxpayer. And on the declaration of assets, I've done declaration twice when I was minister, MP, and I did both in and out. I'm sure one of the few who did it. I was one of those who were preaching the theory of declaring assets and making them public. At the time, we were overruled then by majority of the people, because I did not really understand declaring the assets and keeping them confidential only to the Auditor General, but that's my personal view.
Under Article 78, whether you are co-equal to all your colleague ministers or you are superior in ranking to them, and you said you are a minister who is coordinating, and because of that you can flex your muscles. What kind of muscles can you flex? Because they are all equal.
If you ask somebody, we need data to do certain things, to do analysis. And if you ask somebody to bring the data and the data is not coming, what will you do? If you are coordinating, you must find a way of getting that information. And you must give him or her a deadline that I want this information, but otherwise we can't run the system. The system must be run with some discipline in it, wouldn't it? Wouldn't you think so? If you are coordinating and whatever you ask, it doesn't come, what will you do? You sit down and look into the air? I think I have to literally have some guidelines. So far, in the transition, I'm doing the same, and I haven't had any problem with anybody. People are so ready to make sure that we are singing on the same hymn sheet. We want to achieve economic transformation. And that calls some efforts, that calls for some discipline, that calls for an analysis. Analysis can only be done with figures. And if the figures are with you and you won't bring it, shouldn't we take steps to get them from you?
The Honorable Osafo-Marfo has paid his due to this country. He served this country very, very well, and he's an inspiration to many of us. However, during his tenure as Minister for Finance and Minister for Education, there were some issues that came up. You were rocked with a few scandals that Ghanaians will want to hear you on. At the Ministry of Finance, there was an IFC loan, there was a CNTCI loan, whose address turned out to be the address of a hairdressing salon in the United Kingdom. I hold in my hands here the Hansard of 30th June 2004, and that is the latest record of this matter in this House, where a motion of rescission was filed by the then Minority Leader, Honorable Alban S.K. Bagbin, and seconded by his deputy, Honorable Doa Jaho, who later became Speaker of this House. You objected to it, and in column 887, you said, Mr. Speaker, I think this motion for the House to rescind its decision must not only be rejected, but be rejected with contempt. Some 13 years on, CNTCI never materialized. Will you use this opportunity to clear the air on this matter? When you went to the Ministry of Education as well, the Daily Dispatch reported on the 18th of October 2005 about a Macmillan textbook scandal. It's an alarm blow over 256 billion CD contract. So my question, Mr. Chairman, has to do with these scandals that rocked the nominee when he served as minister. I would want to know from the nominee how he responds to IFC, to CNTCI, and to the Macmillan issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I think you were too young at the time to read the matter, because I read a press.
Honorable nominee, yes. That is not an acceptable.
Okay.
Can you withdraw?
Mr. Chairman, I withdraw that statement.
Thank you.
With apology. Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, a press conference was held on this matter. This is why, and he should have also brought in the press conference which answered these very questions. And you don't put it in the middle and try to make a gain out of it. That's why I'm saying that perhaps you didn't hear the press conference. There was a press conference on the Macmillan, there was a press conference, detailed press conference, also on the ICITI and then the IFC. If you are in the Ministry of Finance, you get inundated with people trying to give you credit lines. When you get that type of letter, there are certain steps you take. You first of all request for a confidential report for Dun and Bradstreet, which is a source Ghana ascribed to for information about what you have received, somebody wanting to give you a loan. Now, the Dun and Bradstreet report we had on IFC were positive. Barclays did it on our behalf. We were looking for long-term funds, and they were ready to give us long-term funds. So we started dealing with them. But they were brought to our attention by very senior members of the government. Now, along the line, we insisted, or I insisted, that we wanted to know the bank where the money which intended to give us kept, located, what we call a location report, so that our bankers are XYZ. You wouldn't tell us your balance, but there should be evidence that you have the financial muscle to provide that type of loan over that period. We then had difficulty getting that confirmation on location and period. I came to Parliament, on the floor of Parliament, and the records are also there, to say that in view of the difficulty we are getting on the location and the financial muscle of this thing, even though we had positive report from Dun & Bradstreet, we were withdrawing that whole application. So we withdrew it. Now on Macmillan, there are two sources of book supply to Ghana, Macmillan and Longmans. We, depending on which range of the school textbooks you are dealing with, one is stronger than the other. Some of them, Macmillan supply more the basic, the primary ones than Longmans and vice versa. Now, when we were tendered for this, we sought the opinion of the NAT on the books and found out that 68% of the books, the range that we are talking about, was supplied by Macmillan. And therefore, if you are making a choice between Longmans and Macmillan, your choice is Macmillan. So we recommended and wrote a copious memo to the tender board for sole sourcing and then the procurement center. Now, this article which came was very mischievous. It was mischievous. I answered it, of course. At that time, if anybody paid attention, it was mischievous because the very day that we got the approval from the procurement board that we could sole source because of the rationalization that we have put up from Macmillan, we had in the morning this article appearing in the Daily Dispatch. And Mr. Chairman, it's important to note that I never then pursued even that whole tender. We never bought a single book for Macmillan. So any view that anybody holds that we bought, and you've been to that ministry, and you should find out, because you have that connection, whether under your Osafo-Marfo as minister, we bought a single book from Macmillan. No, we did not. Because I found out that there were intrigues to create problem in the whole industry, and I prefer to keep my honor than so I refused to carry out the tender, and we didn't buy anything from Macmillan. So, as far as I'm concerned, it is that kind of, call it, I don't know what word to use, but people tend to be mischievous. And demonization on things which are frivolous. It is frivolous. Somebody who originally supplied books to the ministry has done it for years. And for the range that we are looking for, they supply 68% of it. If you are talking about sole sourcing, it would be justified to give them because then you can negotiate even the price down. Then you say the headline was a deal, Macmillan deal or something was the deal. Even the figure he brought up, nobody knows. And up to today, I never bought a single book from Macmillan under that arrangements. So I have, as far as I'm concerned, no scandal. It was a propaganda which worked for them because once you carry out that headline, people will speak on it from different angles in the newspapers and it tends to stick. But no book was ever bought from Macmillan. So that only was spurious and not right.
The 1992 Constitution, 66, talks about term of office of president. And Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I read. That's 66(1). A person elected as president shall, subject to clause 3 of this article, hold office for a term of 4 years, beginning from the date on which he is sworn in as president. Which means that if a president is elected, he has 4 years to implement his programs and policies until a new president assumes office. After the elections, the Afghan government undertook some appointments, did some appointments, and awarded some contracts. And the transitional team, led by the Honorable Nominee, had problems with that. I want to find out from the Honorable Nominee whether the Afghan government did something wrong constitutionally, which is why they came out to say that they reserve the right to review appointments and contracts done by the Afghan government.
Yes, Mr.
Chairman, I think when the transitional team was formed, the former chief of staff and myself, who were the joint chairman of the transitional team, agreed on some ground rules. We didn't want a lot of We wanted some peace and very smooth transition to take place. So we decided to do some ground rules among ourselves. And we decided that, you see, there should be, for instance, no employment immediately after the president has been declared, while the president is in waiting. There should be no procurement, etc., etc. And I reduced this into writing to him. We kept on hearing of these things going on, that people were employing, people were procuring, and those kind of things, which created some problem for our side of the transition team. But we really didn't want to shout over these things because we still wanted a very smooth transition team. But naturally, these things can be and should be reviewed as a matter of course. We have a payroll for every department and every sector institution in this country. So if I'm appointed a new minister and your payroll, you are not on the payroll till December, the day of the election, and you're going to appear on the payroll for January, when were you engaged in that particular thing? You are going to create a problem. The minister is likely to say that all those who were not on the payroll by a particular date, I will do away with their services. I can see it happening. Of course, if they have also been engaged long ago and they were just resuming for whatever reason, there will be time to rationalize. But certainly, procurement done after 7th of December in certain cases will have to be justified in terms of when it was commenced, where it has reached, and that kind of thing. I had the occasion on more than 7 occasions to stop auctioning of vehicles and that kind of thing. I had agreed with my co-chairman that ministers who have used cars for more than 2 years could buy it and even went further to even reduce it further by 30%, because that is within the rules. And we will try to be as nice as possible. But if, despite all these niceties, people decided to do things that will create problem for us, I consider it unfair. But not until the people are out, you can't see what is gone wrong. So my transition members were putting pressure on me to do ABC. I said, no, let's have a very smooth transition. Let's take time to look at these things and also do what is right and what we can explain to the Ghanaian public. Like if names appear on the payroll after December, we definitely will lay them off quietly. If certain procurements have been carried out on the very day, then we're going to, yes? Then, because why would you employ after, in fact, the American system, Mr. Chairman, the word lame duck president comes out of the American system. From August, up to the time the next president is sworn in, nothing happens in the U.S. in terms of procurement, in terms of this, which has not been done before.
Mr. Chairman, the nominee couldn't tell whether the Ghanaian government did anything constitutionally wrong. But he says they will, if they have to terminate people who have been duly appointed or employed, they will do so. My second question is, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
Please, hold on, please, Mr. Chairman, a moment. I think I ignored the latter part of his question. I want to answer it, please. Whether we did anything constitutionally wrong, and the answer is yes. Under the Transition Act, Act 212-845, it is very clear that handing over notes should be given to the Administrator General a month in advance. So when you come to power, you just go there and pick them. On Sunday, when we were inaugurated, the 9th, and we requested for them because they should have been handed over a month earlier. There was nothing to hand over to us. They pleaded for Monday. Monday, when we met, out of about 39 reports.
Mr. Chairman, page 17 of MPP Manifesto 2016 talks about reducing, page 17, reducing the corporate tax rate from 25 to 20%, abolishing the special import levy, abolishing the 17.5% VAT on imported medicines not produced in the country, abolishing the 17.5% VAT on financial services, abolishing the 5% VAT on real estate sales, abolishing the 17.5% VAT on domestic airline tickets. Then when it goes to page 18, they will seek to broaden tax base as a result of formalization of the economy. After abolishing a lot of the tax components, we are seeking to broaden the tax base. Can the nominee tell us the areas which they are seeking to broaden the tax to cover so that Ghanaians can prepare for to pay for those taxes yet to be introduced? Can he be specific on some areas where they will impose taxes on? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, when you talk about broadening tax rate, it means that instead of taxing 100 people, you will be looking for 150. You are taking steps to broaden. Now, if you reduce from 25 to 20, the consequential result could be many more people voluntarily coming in to pay tax who have been dodging. So that will broaden the tax base. Now, that could broaden. Now, let me finish. Let me finish. Because when you talk about reducing the VAT on micro and small scale from 17.5 to 3, you would definitely broaden the base, because a lot more people who were dodging the 17.5 will come in and pay the 3. That's what we mean by broadening. You are going to, more people will come in. So that's what will happen. And look, we have a serious housing deficit. Why would you be taxing 5% on real estate? We think that it becomes a nuisance tax in respect of housing. So you remove it, and more people will put up, and you solve another problem of housing. When you broaden, you are bringing more people into the tax net. That's what we mean by broadening. Mr. Honorable Member, you are just asking more people to come into the tax net. That's what you mean. You bring it down, more people come into the net. And that is broadening. We are not talking about increasing. You bring more people in.
Mr. Chairman, I think the nominee did not understand my question.
Honorable Samzah, please. Can you listen to me, please? You asked him a question, he has answered. You have one more opportunity. Please go ahead.
This is not fair. This is not fair. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, last year we were all together doing vetting, and anyway. Mr. Chairman, the honorable nominee told us that as a senior minister, he's been asked to coordinate the economic ministry. Yes, ministries. We'll have a ministry for planning. We have ministry for monitoring and evaluation. Mr. Chairman, I want to find out from the honorable nominee whether these portfolios are not going to contradict themselves and not duplicate their functions.
If we may get a clarification, the nominee said that he is to coordinate the economic sector. That is not the same as monitoring and evaluation ministry. Yes. ministries is only a small sector of the entire. Hello? Can you give us some order, please?
But you're also contradicting what he said, so we can't keep quiet and allow you to say it. That is a fact. You let him answer or you overrule it, but you don't go answer it. But you're also trying to answer.
If leadership would not respect the chair, we may probably cede chairmanship to you.
No, the chair must
Please.
The chair will have to respect himself. He must answer the question.
Left off. Going through your CV, I noticed that after your first degree at the University of Science and Technology, where you had BSc in mechanical engineering, you never really bothered yourself to pursue any further degrees. But you have an impressive, working career. And maybe on another platform, I would want your guidance, especially as we have a lot of people now who even in offices sometimes rush out of their offices, to pursue other degrees. I would perhaps on another platform, I would like your guidance on that to help us. But to my substantive questions, first on the on the fact that you are to be coordinating the economic ministries. I noticed that an earlier question had to do with your role vis-a-vis the role of the economic management team. And given your record and record of other members such as Honorable Osayakoto and Kwame Pinim in the past, as far as the history and record of the NPP administration is concerned, I was wondering what the role of the economic management team will be vis-a-vis your role. But I think you have touched on it. But still on the economy, you answered a question relating to fiscal space. And the fact that you will renegotiate the IMF deal to create, as you put it in your words, fiscal space. So my question to you is that an indication that your government, led by Nana Akufo-Addo, will be borrowing, President Nana Akufo-Addo will be borrowing more?
This is a very important question. Now, there is refinancing arrangement in managing an economy. If I owe 100 cedis and I'm to repay it in 3 years, if I'm able to get 100 cedis to be repaid in 10 years, to substitute, I create myself a fiscal space because the repayment schedule will be very different and I'll get extra money to spend because I have rearranged the debt. And therefore, our negotiation will go from many directions, including reborrowing to refinance. And reborrowing to refinance on better terms, better in terms of repayment period, in terms
Chairman,
of
if you indulge me, my question is a simple one, sorry. No, I just wanted to, because he wasn't answering the question, so I just wanted to draw your attention.
Honourable Member, the rule is that you permit the nominee to answer. You have 3 opportunities, so you can.
Okay. I just wanted to know if you'll be borrowing more. That's the question. If you will be borrowing more.
The question is that we'll be borrowing certainly, but under different arrangements. And I explain it, that you want to borrow to refinance such that you have room or space to operate. Because instead of paying a loan in 5 years, you are paid off that loan, but you have to repay the next one in 10 years. So there will be less cash outflow, and therefore you create fiscal space for yourself. Borrowing more, certainly, but differently. And you borrow to refinance, to change your whole debt profile. That's what you are seeking to do.
Thank you. To my second.
I have before me the transition team report of 2009. And in it, there was supposed to be a government infilling scheme. And as part of that scheme, a number of government functionaries at the time benefited from the state lands. Your name is one of such beneficiaries. Again, I have before me a letter that was written by the former chief of staff. And in that letter, reference is made to you, the former chief of staff, the immediate former chief of staff, Mr. Julius Debra. And in that letter, reference is made to you by name. And it had to do with a discussion that you had with that government, with the previous government or functionaries of the previous government on 19th December 2016 on where the former president was supposed to reside. So the question is, did this meeting take place? Did this agreement happen? And what is your view on the concern that the general public have expressed about how politicians appropriate state assets? Thank you.
Thank you very much. The presidential transition team works as a team. There's a joint chairman, that is the chief of staff, outgoing chief of staff, and myself. He did speak to me about the wish of the president to take as his retirement benefit the house in which he was living. And I told him, and he's around, that this is a decision for the transitional team to make, not Osafo-Marfo. So he discussed with me. Nobody reached an agreement on the matter. And me personally, and I do not believe that people, not even at that level, but at even lower levels, should be given the chance to buy houses which they lived in, which are normally official houses. Because, like where Kwesibuchwe lived, Kwame lived, I also lived. If any of them was allowed to buy, I wouldn't have a place to live. So I think that the whole idea of having houses designated for certain positions in the system should be maintained and should not be allowed for people to buy off. Yes, they did. And
he didn't talk about his benefits, the fact that he's...
the plot, yes. A plot of land, yes, I was given. In fact, I was invited, interestingly, by the Commissioner for Lands. He said a list had been submitted to him for him. My name was not on it. And as a former Minister of Finance, I was entitled to such a benefit. And a plot of land, and he reduced this into writing. And therefore, when you came to power, they even went further to write to me to confirm that particular plot of land. So it's quite interesting. And I will produce that letter to you, signed by Mr. Odame. Thank you.
My last question. Thank you very much.
I noticed that when Madam Oslausu talked about the fact that you were a chief before, she said so with pride because you are an uncle. That tells me that despite the fact that you are, like myself, a proud Ghanaian, you're also very proud of your cultural heritage. That's what makes you now, given the fact that some questions on the floor have been asked, here have been asked based on discussions conducted on social media and the traditional media, I wish to find out from you if it is correct that you are on record without your knowledge to have suggested that the management of this country's resources should be put in the hands of those who come from 5 rich resource regions. And it is unfair for anyone who does not come from any of these 5 regions to be made responsible for managing the resources of this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is one of these distorted paste and cast statements. I am the chairman of the Council of Elders of the NPP in the Eastern region. We're fighting this election on the economy. And I was giving a series of lectures on the economy and to various groups within the region. When you go to the turn of the Council of elders, me the chairman. The regional chairman spoke, Honorable Hartman spoke, I spoke, and I spoke on the economy. Now, you don't talk about the economy by starting with the resource location. I started with, I'm just telling you how the thing was distorted and put out of context. I started by talking about how poorly this economy has managed, that we have gone from 9.4 billion debt to 110 billion debt at the time, and how growth without oil was 9.1 billion and has dwindled to about 4%, and etc., etc., etc. And I said something which I had said in this room, that Ghana is not poor, and that the resource base of this country is found in 5 regions. And I mentioned the regions specifically. I was making a strong economic argument. Now, people removed all that I said about the poor management of the economy, and then made it look like I started by talking about the source of the location of this thing, and put it forward, and change certain things to make it me look like I was being a travelist. I mean, and it was bad. This is why I find people very mischievous. When I'm talking about the economy, I'll start talking about where the resources are. Does it make sense when you're talking about the economy? Talk about performance of the economy first. You talk about the causes of the poor management before you say, look, we are strong and we have the foreign resources located this way. But if you take all the top part, you take the whole thing out of context and make it look very bad, travelistic. So I think, yes, it happened. Newspapers reported something wrong, and I think people should be ashamed of themselves when they do this kind of cut and paste to create the wrong impression in the system. They should have brought out what I said about the mismanagement of the economy, because that was going seriously against other people. Nobody talked about it.
And the languages spoken and written. We talked about English, Tree, and some knowledge of German. But I recall when you were the Minister of Finance, you signed the German debt relief agreement. And there was this controversy over the exact amount involved. While some were talking about 230 million euros, others were talking about 16.4 million euros. And in trying to clarify the issues, I recall vividly some statements you made on Joy FM to the effect that you could not read the document thoroughly. With this knowledge of German, what really happened?
I'm happy you have asked this question, because if you know protocol of agreements, here we are. It's very important. Here we are. Ghana owes Germany. Germany comes forward to say that I'm going to write off your debt. They write to us. Most countries, we exchange letters on the write-off, and that is the end. But Germans, they insist on an agreement, because their parliament insists on an agreement to show that they can take it off their books. Now, agreements, we have agreement with Germany. The official language to be used for the signing is German. We have it with the French. Official language to be used for signing is French. The English is by the side, it's not used. The figures in the agreement, we gave it to them, because the debt is on our books in the Ministry of Finance. When ministers of finance and House of State are to sign an agreement, the backroom job would have been done by the people. The figures, we send the figures there to be put in the agreement. On the day of signing of the agreement, it is komisch. The Germans will say, it is ridiculous for anybody who think that an agreement of 25 pages, which is writing off your debt to them, you will read it on the spot and sign. We don't do that. For heaven's sake, protocol demands that we just open the page for signing, you come ceremoniously to sign, because we had agreed on the figures earlier. So when people were talking about, why should I read that agreement in that room? That's not how it is done. People who did not understand any of this became pontificating what should have been done. And I myself said, I did not read. Why should I? I gave them the figures. The figures were picked in the Ministry of Finance, that the debt standing on our books, which we want to write off, is 45.8 million euro. And we have picked it from Bank of Ghana. So this whole idea of me reading English or German is irrelevant. Because we don't dare in any agreement, Mr. Chairman, read the agreement in the room before signing. We would have done all the job. And some pressmen just jump at it. So when people want to destroy in Ghana, it's very easy because they try to say things which, between the falsehood and truth, looks close. Yes, I did not read it, but it is not necessary. It is never done that you read the agreement at the ceremony of signing. It's never done. The Minister of Finance comes together with the German Minister of Finance, signed with me. Did he read it? He never read it. He came and our agents showed us a dotted line. We signed, drank some coffee, off we go. So what is the whole idea of signing this? There was quite, the Germans themselves said, you see, the German ambassador later called me, said, this is komisch. You know komisch in German? This is funny. Ghanaians are talking about you reading the agreement in the room before signing. For heaven's sake, that is never done.
Thank you, Mr. Nominee.